Yo, what up? It's Chris. Hope you're doing well. While we walk around and look at the plant life, it's been raining a little bit, so the blooms are coming out. I want to talk to y'all about art and creativity, and not from a point of view of what you should do or there's some right or wrong way to approach art, but just perspective, especially in a time period where everyone is being told the art is in a way secondary to understanding content, understanding social media marketing, understanding email lists, understanding how a team is formed, understanding all types of administrative and corporate elements of if you're indie, starting your own business and having an LLC. And I want to remind people and go back to this notion of creativity, like this right here, like life and blooming and the expression of universal energy, not just generating revenue, not just gaining popularity or people knowing who you are. And so as I walk around, I'm going to show y'all some of the gardens and some of the plant life in the neighborhood, but also talk about art for art's sake. And the competitive element, especially if you're in hip hop, and the kind of hyper masculine element of hip hop that has people constantly associate hip hop with being a sport, or as if like making art or music is somehow inherently competitive, or that in order to be competitive, there has to be some zero sum element. If you think about it, like you either win or lose. There are ways to calculate who wins or loses. There are rules by which all have agreed and participate. But when you make art or music, that's not the case. We don't all agree as to what is good or bad music. We can't all agree as to what makes someone the best ever at something. And even that notion, like that obsession with exceptionalism and the exceptionalism within art or music, what does that do to the creative drive? If part of creativity is allowing things to just be and exist and come into being, then what we see here, like these flowers and the plant life, it's a creative act of sprouting, of growing, of developing, of evolving. And as artists, how do we do that when we're so concerned with monetary gain, or we're so concerned with acclaim, awareness, popularity, likes, views, clicks, kind of the engagement of content? And how many artists now, when they first start to make a creative project, are already considering the output of it in the sense of the content that they may make. So you have artists and people that 15 years ago would have purely been musicians that are now technologists. Like in order to make music, they've had to learn how to use Reason, how to use Ableton, how to use Pro Tools, how to use Logic, and the wind is probably going to cause a problem. Logic, Pro Tools, Reason, all these different computer programs just to make music. Whereas 20 years ago, they would have learned how to play 3 or 4 different instruments. There were people that played bass, played drums, played guitar, and would switch up what instrument they played in the middle of their set. Now I think it's dope that you have all these instruments in a laptop. I mean, part of how I make music is sampling and reworking previously existing sounds. I am not a good live musician. And so I love the fact that I can sample and I can make beats. I'm also show y'all this fig tree. It's fruiting now. The animals have been getting a bunch of the figs, but I think it does augment how the music is made. Like when people did not have the computer and did not have the ability to access sampling in the way that they do now, then you had people that spent hours and hours and hours learning how to play different instruments. And is that the case now? When I think about that notion that like rap is a sport, I think it also takes away from why you're involved. Like if art or creativity or expression has the ability to exist on its own and not tied to any other need, well, that's different than a sport. I mean, obviously sport is exercise, and I think there is an element of making art where practice or element of dedication or an element of being consistent or tradecraft, it may be a part of art, but I think that's a particular type of art. I don't think all art requires obsession, and part of sport in being competitive has a comparative nature that can sometimes be detrimental to art. And when we make people attach comparison to art, how does that alter the art that's being made? If everyone was significant and validated in presenting their own perspective in the art that they made, then would there be a need for comparative analysis? Would we need to do anything other than to have an understanding of how things sit in relationship to each other? Yo, what up, Gravity? How you doing? And have an awareness that art is not made in a vacuum, and that we all have different experiences with art and can discuss those experiences or those engagements. But when we compare art or try to say this rapper is better than another rapper, or this artist is more socially significant than another artist, what does that really mean? And to what extent are we doing that? What is the purpose of doing that? Do we need to have a hierarchy of enjoyment in order to recognize the creative work around us in the world? Do I need to have a favorite type of bush? Do I need to have a favorite type of tree? Or can I just learn? I think this is a cypress over here. Can I just learn what these trees are and appreciate what exists in the world around us? In terms of art, as an MC, people always yo, what's your top 5 rapper list, your top 10 rapper list? I don't have an answer to that. It's I've listened to so much rap, dog. I'm 48 years old. I started listening to rap in 84, whenever I first could hear it. And I've heard so many different eras of rap. So it'd be you mean from when I was a teenager or a child? Well, what if I listen to that music now? There were songs that I loved when I was 12 that I listen now. I'm going to have a different experience. Why be comparative? Why not just appreciate that at a different point, different things had significance in my life in various ways? And so I've just been thinking more and more how to take advantage of the technology, of modernity, of the reality of how society has evolved, how we, or me as a person, how I've grown and changed. But also remember why I made art when I was a 5-year-old. Why did I make art when I was 3 years old? What was it that made me want to draw on the walls? And my mom was yo, you keep drawing on the walls, you were going to get spanked. And she leaves the house, and I'm looking at the wall, and I'm looking at my markers and crayons, and I'm yeah, I'll be able to wash it off before she gets home. I saw how we cleaned it before. And then I draw on the walls. Then I get distracted and go play downstairs. And then my mom comes home and she's I told you, don't draw on the walls. Go get the belt. And I got to take that spanking. Does that stop me from making the art? Nope. Just next time, I remember, don't go do something else before cleaning the wall. Well, what happens? I draw on the wall again. And this time I use some crayon or some type of material that's not working. So then I go get a more permanent marker. Well, finish drawing on the wall, go to clean it up. When my mom gets back, I can't erase the permanent marker. So she comes in yo, you drew on the wall again. You already got spanked for this. And it's yeah, go get the belt. So, so to me, I want to remember, what was that drive? What was that feeling of, I am willing to put in work, I'm willing to take punishment and pain in order to express this thing that's in my mind, or this feeling I have in my body that I need to get out or need to share, and not be over concerned with the other elements, not overthink it, not get into will people like it or not. I mean, obviously it feels a certain way, and this ties into whole issues of, in our society, comparison and competition in feeling valid as human. So do I need, is my validity as a human rooted in being a good artist? Is my validity as a human rooted in being a good person? Is my validity as a human rooted in making a bunch of money? What is it? Is it just because I was born? I walk the streets and feel confident and feel yeah, everything's all good. Am I that type of person? Am I the type of person that in a way needs external validation in order to feel what my life is meaningful? And who knows? I don't know if I have perspective of that, but I know that there's a huge part of me that could care less if anyone knows anything about the art that I make, sees it, hears it, has an opinion about it. Could not care less. But there's another part of me that puts time, effort, thought, energy, spirit into the art, and in a way I think it's fun to share it with people. I think it's not a negative thing to encounter and may have some positive elements, with me sharing the art and the people that I work with. I do believe that like some of the hip hop experience and some of the things that we learn and express through art and hip hop and curation are significant and valuable to people in a like human to human. Hey, oh, what's up? Good to see you. See what I'm saying? Like you see your neighbor say what's up. Like that's hip hop shit. Because I know them from being out, we outside. But it does come down to then like, let's say you make art just for yourself and you never tell anybody, you keep a journal, you draw, you scribble, that's dope to me. Like to me, I don't think there has to be this pressure that you have to show other people or that it has to have any meaning for anyone else except you. Let's say you make art and like sharing it with people. Sometimes that's dope also. I don't think there's this whole thing of because you may have a talent for something, you need to try to maximize profitability out of it. Maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you need to like, don't think about profit and just do the art as much as you like doing it. And when it's not fun, don't do it. Maybe there are collaborations and, oh, look at these figs. Maybe there are ways that art is a means to other things for you. It's totally possible that you're a person where you make art because it then introduces you to people that could be possible significant others, or gets you into social scenarios where you now have commonalities with other people. I mean, there are tons of people that make art, not necessarily for the sake of art, but because of the other social kind of accommodations that come with it, or the other like social dynamics that come with it. There's so many different reasons a person could make art. I just would hope that it's tied to their internal kind of disposition. And it's not so much wrapped up in the notions of art is content, art is sport, art is job, art is profession, art is kind of social status, or like, and kind of returning to this notion of art is art. Art is just the creative expression. And like, kind of the way I look at it, I know there's this notion that, well, culture is tied to art and we can build culture. To me, like culture, like with bacteria, is an organic outgrowth of activity within a closed cycle of sorts, or like certain proximity or ecosystem. So that like culture emerges, art emerges out of culture. The people that make art and are participants in culture are shaping the culture, but it's not like a vehicle driven and you're like, I made some culture, let's go pick up people and make more culture. No. And so with art, I'm hoping that people allow it to just be art and allow content to be content that may include art. Oh, look what we got here. Allow commodity to be commodity that includes art. Allow design to be design that includes art. Allow commercial activity to be commercial activity that includes art. But like sometimes things aren't scalable. So like, look at the beauty of all this whole time I've been walking and talking, I've been looking at different plants and different flowers, and seeing the diversity of everyone's yard has been super dope. It's not scalable, because if you wanted to scale, you would then have to kind of flatten or generalize or make up some way of saying, well, in each garden, we're going to have a certain type of plant and flower, and we're going to design it this way. The uniqueness of each one of these gardens and expressions, to me, doesn't need to be compared. Like, it's not like, again, competitive of, oh, wow, they got the statue over here, but nah, they got the magnolia tree over here. It's like, all this is dope. And part of it is the individualized expression. And you can't control nature. So even in how people try to design their yards or not, there's a natural element of no matter what you do as the artist, there's a engagement with the world around you. That's the type of art that I like. Like, I like the fact that one person's rap song might be 6 minutes long. And look at the difference here between how cultivated this yard and garden is, and then how wild it is right here. All beauty. You see these Rose of Sharon right here. Rose of Sharon, I don't know how you say it. But you're going to have some rap songs that are 6 minutes long, that are abstract, and you don't understand what the rapper's saying. You're going to have some that are 2 minutes long, and everything is very specified. And look at these pollinators. And to me, that's some of the beauty of art, is that you get the full spectrum. You get the breadth of the human experience. And in my perspective, art should reflect the world and universal experience that people are having. That's the purpose of it. Like, but without purpose, that's like what happens, or a consequence of it, not necessarily purpose. So that when people make things, whether it's they figure out how to make concrete, fences, houses, there are all these ways that it can lead to engagement and experience. If you're an architect, then we understand the way people are supposed to engage with it. Like, you help design dwellings, or you help design structures. If you're an engineer, you make sure that structure won't fall apart. If you're an electrician, you make sure the electricity and the wiring won't cause a fire. If you are a plumber, you can get the piping. There are all these things that involve creativity. But you can say plumbing is an art, but it's a profession. It is a vocation. It's a lot of other things that say, no matter how artsy you wanted to get in making this plumbing system, the city has parameters for a building code. So you will have to do it a certain way. No matter how artsy you want to get, there are only certain types of materials that can be used in certain municipalities to do the plumbing. So if you think about, you're a teacher, you're an educator. I want to educate the youth. Let's teach them about Chicano women in California in the 1950s and their advocacy for labor rights. And then the school board says, whoa, you can't do that. Federal government just says we not woke no more. You can't talk about Chicanos. You can't talk about women. You can't talk about labor rights. But you're an educator. You're like, no, I want to educate these young people. They at some point could be laborers. They at some point could be managers. They at some point could own businesses. They at some point could be legislators. They should know the history of this experience in America. No, we can't do that. So you see how it's constrained. So if you're an artist, you're not supposed to have a constraint. The whole thing is like, your job is make the art. It's not consider if the art will be financially viable or successful. Think about how many likes, views, or clicks you'll get. Understand how an algorithm that's in a black box works. That's not your job as an artist. Your job as an artist is to be like, I don't have a job. I make art. And if you're gonna have all these constraints, why not just be a structural engineer and at least have healthcare and benefits? But if you're gonna make art, then I would start to figure out how to let go of the notion that anyone knows how to do your art besides you, and that includes me. And so that means that for you, it means you got to go rent a cabin in Maine for 3 months and write a novel, isolated. Cool. If that means you move to New York City and have 13 roommates and work at a pizza shop, cool. If that means you stay where you are and have a day job you kind of like that facilitates making art that you love and you're happy in doing it, cool, man. But I just hope people return to that childlike reason they make art, that youthful exuberance around creativity and experimentation, and having that feeling of what happens when I do this. Because that's the part I really remember about when I was young making art. I didn't know what crayons did different than paint, did different than markers, then did different than pencil. And part of the whole thing wasn't really just, I have a picture I want to draw. It was, what happens when you do this? What happens when you mix charcoal with pastel? Oh, that didn't really work. What happens when you mix watercolor and then colored pencil? Oh, that's kind of cool. And having that memory tied to experiment and art. I'm about to grab some food. By the way, the food's too expensive out here. We got to grow our own food. Black Knight ownership, you know what I'm saying? All right, I'm going to holler at y'all.